In the vast, dark realm of the underworld, dominated by Hades, the dreaded god of the dead, lie the souls of all humanity, awaiting their final judgment and fate. But before a single soul can attempt to escape or enter without permission, it encounters an insurmountable obstacle: Cerberus, a three-headed monster, each with fiery eyes and a serpentine tail that guards the underworld's gates. Cerberus was the son of two terrible monsters, Typhon and Echidna. Typhon was a winged giant with 100 fire-breathing dragon heads, and Echidna was a nymph with the body of a serpent. Both were enemies of the gods of Olympus and wreaked havoc in the world. From their union were born several ferocious creatures, such as the Hydra of Lerna, the Chimera, the Sphinx, and the Lion of Nemea. But the most fearsome of all was Cerberus, the three-headed dog, or more, according to some versions, with a serpent's tail and other snakes on his back. His fangs were sharp, and his bark was deafening. Cerberus grew in power and ferocity, becoming feared even by the gods. Hades, the god of the underworld, sought a guardian for the gates of his kingdom, where the souls of the dead resided. Hades was the brother of Zeus and Poseidon and had received the domain of the dead as part of the division of the world after the war against the Titans. Impressed by Cerberus' imposing presence and ferocious nature, Hades chose him as his guardian. Cerberus took up residence at the entrance to the underworld, ensuring that the dead could not escape and the living could not enter without permission. Cerberus spent many years fulfilling his duty as guardian of the underworld, with no one daring to disturb or challenge him. One day, however, his tranquility was interrupted by the arrival of a hero who intended to take Cerberus as part of his 12 labors. That hero was Heracles, the son of Zeus and Alcmene, famous for his strength and exploits. Heracles had been condemned to serve King Eurystheus for 12 years, performing the tasks he imposed on him as punishment for having killed his wife and children in a fit of madness provoked by Hera, Zeus' wife and Heracles' enemy. Among the jobs he had to do were killing the Lion of Nemea, capturing the Hind of Cyrenia, cleaning the stables of Aeneas, stealing the apples of the Hesperides, and others. The last and most complex of the jobs was to bring Cerberus from the underworld to the surface, alive and unarmed. Heracles accepted the challenge, even though he knew it was almost impossible. Before leaving, he consulted the soothsayer Tiresias, who advised him to ask Hades for permission to take Cerberus away and to offer him a barley cake with honey to calm him down. Heracles went to the underworld, accompanied by his friend and nephew Iolaos and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, who protected him. To enter, he had to cross the cave of Tenrus in the southern Peloponnese, where it was believed that there was one of the entrances to the realm of the dead. He met the ferryman Charon, who demanded a coin to cross the river Styx. Heracles had no coin, so he threatened Charon with his mace and forced him to carry it. On the way, he encountered several souls of the dead, including that of his friend Meleager, who asked him to marry his sister Deianira. He also discovered Theseus, the hero who had killed the Minotaur and had been trapped in the underworld for attempting to abduct Persephone. Heracles freed him by pulling him tightly but left a part of his thigh stuck to the throne of Hades. Finally, he arrived before the palace of Hades and Persephone, where Cerberus was tied with a golden chain. Heracles asked Hades to let him take Cerberus, promising to return him later. Hades agreed on the condition that he would not use weapons or harm him. Heracles approached Cerberus and offered him the barley cake with honey, but the dog refused and bit his hand. Heracles, enraged, grabbed Cerberus by the throat and dragged him to the exit while the dog barked and spat poison. Heracles managed to drag Cerberus out of the underworld. It brought him to Eurystheus, who was so frightened at the sight of him that he hid in a jar. Heracles thus accomplished his last work and was freed from his servitude. He then returned Cerberus to the underworld, where he continued to guard the gates of Hades until the end of time. After being captured and returned by Heracles, Cerberus returned to his post as guardian of the underworld. However, he soon had another unexpected visitor, who came with a different mission. It was Orpheus, the son of Apollo and Calliope, one of the Muses. Orpheus was an exceptional musician and poet, capable of enchanting every living being, even stones and trees, with his lyre and voice. Orpheus had fallen in love with Eurydice, a nature nymph, and they had married. But on their wedding day, Eurydice was bitten by a poisonous snake and died. Orpheus was heartbroken and decided to go to the underworld to look for her, relying on the power of his music to move Hades and Persephone and convince them to return his beloved. Orpheus entered the underworld through the cave of Taenarus, the same cave used by Heracles. There, he met Charon, the ferryman he could not pay with a coin, for he had none. So, he took out his lyre and played such a beautiful melody that Charon was enchanted. He took him to the other side of the river Styx. Then he met Cerberus, the three-headed dog, to whom he offered no cake but began to play his lyre and sing a song so sweet and sad that the monster fell asleep, letting Orpheus pass untroubled. Orpheus came to the palace of Hades and Persephone, where the souls of the dead surrounded the thrones of the rulers of the underworld. Orpheus kneeled before them and begged them to return Eurydice, saying that love was more potent than death. Then he played his lyrics and sang a song so moving that it made everyone cry, even Hades and Persephone, who had never felt compassion for anyone. Hades and Persephone agreed to return Eurydice on one condition: that Orpheus should leave the underworld without looking back and only do so when he is outside. If I looked back in time, I'd lose Eurydice forever. Orpheus accepted the condition and prepared to leave the underworld, followed by Eurydice, still weak and pale. Orpheus crossed the underworld again, passing through Cerberus, who was still asleep, and Charon, who took him back to the other side of the river. Orpheus walked through the cave of Taenarus, eager to see the sunlight and to embrace Eurydice. But when he was about to leave, he made a fatal mistake. He turned to see if Eurydice was following him. At that moment, he saw her for the last time before she was dragged back into the underworld, as he said, "Goodbye, Orpheus, goodbye." Orpheus was crushed and repented of his recklessness. He tried to return to the underworld, but Cerberus had awakened and prevented him from passing. Orpheus resigned himself to living without Eurydice and wandered around the world, playing his lyrics and singing his pain, until he was murdered by women jealous of his love. Their soul was reunited with that of Eurydice in the underworld, and since then, they have never separated. After being deceived by Orpheus and his music, Cerberus regained his position as the guardian of the underworld. However, he would not be the last hero to try to enter the kingdom of the dead. The next to do so would be Aeneas, the Trojan prince who escaped his city's destruction and sought to find a new homeland in Italy. Aeneas was the son of Anchises, a mortal, and of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Aeneas had arrived at Cumae, a town on the Italian coast, where the temple of Apollo and the cave of Sibylla, a prophetess inspired by the god, were located. Aeneas wanted to consult Sibylla about her destiny and how to get to the promised land. Sibylla told him that before that, he should travel to the underworld and meet his father, Anchises, who had died on the way and would reveal the secrets of his future and his offspring. Aeneas accepted the challenge, although he knew it was hazardous. Sibylla told him that, to enter the underworld, she had to find a golden branch growing in a sacred forest, and that it was the gift she would offer to Persephone, the queen of the dead. Aeneas sought the golden branch with the help of his mother, Aphrodite, who sent him 2 pigeons to show him the way. Finally, he found the branch and quickly ripped it out, for it was a sign that the gods favored him. Aeneas returned to Apollo's temple and prepared for the journey. Sibylla accompanied him, for she was the only one who knew the way to the underworld. They both entered through the cave of Averno, one of the entrances to the kingdom of the dead. There they met several souls of the dead, including that of Dido, the queen of Carthage, who had committed suicide for love of Aeneas. Aeneas tried to talk to her, but she ignored it and left with her first husband, Cepheus. Then they came to the river Stygia, where Charon, the shipowner, was, who looked at them with fear. Sibylla showed him the golden branch and ordered him to take them to the other side. Charon obeyed, but not without complaining that the living always caused him trouble. On the way, they saw the monster Charybdis, who devoured the water with his maws, and the Furies, who punished the wicked with lamentations. Finally, they arrived at the underworld's gates, where Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, waved furiously when he saw them. Cybele threw him a barley cake with honey and opium, which drowned him and made him shut up. Aeneas and Cybele passed by the sleeping dog and entered the palace of Hades and Persephone, where they delivered the golden branch as an offering. There they saw the souls of the heroes, the kings, the wise men, and the poets, who told them their stories and advice. Among them was the soul of Anchises, Aeneas' father, who recognized and embraced him. Anchises showed Aeneas the camp of the blessed, where the souls of the righteous and virtuous were, and revealed to him the fate of his people and their descendants, who would find Rome and rule the world. Aeneas was amazed and grateful for his father's words and asked him to let him stay with him in the underworld. But Anchises told him that he should fulfill his mission and that they would meet again one day. Then, Aeneas and Cybele exited the underworld by another gate, which led to the light of day. Cerberus did not see them coming out, for he was still asleep because of the effect of opium. Aeneas and Cybele returned to Cumas, where Aeneas gathered his companions and told them what he had seen and heard. They then resumed their journey to Italy, where new adventures and challenges awaited them. After being drugged by Cybele and Aeneas, Cerberus returned to his post of guardian of the underworld. However, his life would not always be quiet and boring. One day, something happened that would forever change the fate of his master, Hades, and his mistress, Persephone. It is about the kidnapping of Persephone, the daughter of Zeus, and Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and fertility. Persephone was a beautiful and cheerful young woman who liked to walk through the fields and collect flowers with her friends, the nymphs. One day, while in the valley of Enna in Sicily, he saw an excellent flower, a pomegranate, shining in an intense red color. Persephone approached the flower and grabbed it, but at that moment, the earth opened, and out of it came a chariot pulled by black horses, led by Hades, the god of the underworld. Hades had seen Persephone since his reign and had fallen in love with her. She had asked her brother Zeus for permission to marry her, and Zeus had granted it to her without consulting Demeter, Persephone's mother. Hades took the opportunity and kidnapped Persephone, taking her to his chariot. Persephone shouted and asked for help, but no one heard her except Helios, the sun god, and Hecate, the goddess of magic. Hades drove his chariot to the underworld, crossing the river Stygia, where Charon, the sailor, let them pass without trouble. Then they came to the underworld's gates, where Cerberus, the three-headed dog, recognized his master and licked his hand. Hades introduced Persephone to Cerberus, telling him she was his new mistress and that he should obey and protect her. Cerberus accepted, although he did not like sharing his master's affections with someone else. Hades took Persephone to his palace, where he offered him a throne and a crown and told him that she was the underworld queen and that all the dead would respect and worship her. Persephone was unhappy with her situation and asked Hades to let her return with her mother, who would be looking for her. Hades refused, saying he loved her and could not live without her. He told him that if he wanted to, he could eat and drink whatever he wanted, but that he should not touch the pomegranate, the fruit of the underworld, for if he did, he would be bound to him forever. Persephone did not listen to him and refused to eat and drink anything, hoping that he would escape his captivity. Meanwhile, in the world of the living, Demeter was desperate to find her daughter. He asked all the gods and all the mortals, but no one knew anything except Helios and Hecate, who told him the truth. Demeter became angry with Zeus and Hades, punishing them by making the earth sterile without growing plants or fruit. Zeus was concerned about the situation and decided to intervene. He ordered Hades to return Persephone to his mother, for if he did not, humanity would be extinct and the gods would lose their offerings. Hades agreed reluctantly, but before letting her go, he gave Persephone a pomegranate and convinced her to eat 6 seeds, telling him that so he could remember it and see it again. Persephone, who felt affection for Hades, accepted and ate the seeds. Then Hades took her into his chariot and led her to the world of the living, where Demeter was waiting for her. The mother and daughter hugged each other joyfully, but soon they learned what had happened. Zeus told them that Persephone, having eaten the fruit of the underworld, could not stay forever with his mother, but that he had to spend 6 months a year with Hades, one for every seed he had eaten, and 6 months with Demeter. Thus, the balance was established between the underworld and the world of the living, and the origin of the seasons was explained. When Persephone was with his mother, the earth blossomed, and it was spring and summer, and when it was with Hades, the land crumbled and was autumn and winter. Cerberus said goodbye to Persephone with sadness and hope, for he knew he would see her again. He continued fulfilling his duty as guardian of the underworld without anyone else bothering or challenging him. It became an emblem of terror, vigilance, and loyalty.